most common question that I get from viewers on this channel goes something like this. Taylor, I'm in a hyper pop jazz metal band looking for a modeler that has a good tone and feel, and my budget is about $300. What should I get? In all honesty, I'm flattered that you guys would even ask my opinion and trust me to give you good advice. It's not something that I take lightly at all, which is why I almost never give direct recommendations. Here's the thing, there are so many great products out there that you would probably be happy with. So why don't I just directly come out and say what you should buy? Well, that's because I don't know you personally, and it's hard to say what you would enjoy and get the most benefit from with just a small DM with wildly varying information. I don't want to give you bad advice, so my response usually looks something like this. Hey face, thanks so much for watching my channel. There are many options in your price range, and if I'm being honest, they all sound good. What I would do is compare the feature sets of what you need and what fits your budget, because there isn't one that sounds the best. Hope that helps, Taylor. And that's the honest truth. This whole notion of one sounding better is incredibly subjective, and my opinion on what sounds best might dramatically differ from yours. I think the best way to approach this problem of what to buy is to simply make a list and make sure you are getting the unit you need. For example, let's say your budget is $400 and you need MIDI capability so that you can use an external controller, but because of that, you won't need a ton of foot switches or a normal size expression pedal. Then something like the Headrush MX5 might be the one for you. Or let's say you really want to be able to load up some cool, unique amplifiers and in and out options don't really matter as much, then maybe you want to check out the Mooer GE200. By the way, if you're looking at purchasing anything and you use the affiliate link in the description below, you will not only be helping out the channel, but you will have my eternal gratitude. Another question I get often that I want to address right here and explain my opinion on is, which one feels the best? I don't even know how to answer this question because I've never played a piece of gear and thought to myself, wow, this thing feels great. I think the idea of feel is such a subjective thing, mostly propagated by tube snobs that don't want to admit that amp modeling technology has caught up to the sonic sound of real amplifiers. If you think about it, it's such a subjective thing that you can't even prove them wrong. To my knowledge, there is no tool or program that measures feel and can tell you objectively which modelers or amplifiers feel better. The only time that I think there's a real case to be made with the feel proposition is in latency. And to this day, I've never played a modeler that had such bad latency that I noticed any sort of input lag. So to those of you who ask, there's my answer. I will say though that there is something to be said about power sag. There are some compression characteristics that introduce themselves in tube amplifiers when the master volume is turned up really loud. Some modelers have a feature that allows you to adjust this parameter, but in my experience, for the most part, it is such a subtle thing that if you aren't aware of this, you probably wouldn't even notice it anyways. On units that don't have this feature, if you really wanted to add some quote-unquote feel, you can always run a compressor after your amp block to subtly add in some compression and get some of that squishy feedback that people seem to like. Now, with all of that being said, which modeler would I unequivocally suggest to anyone regardless of price or feature sets? Well, that is the one that I use for the most part, and that is the Axe-Fx 3. Probably not a huge surprise to any of you that watch my channel, but let me dive in and explain why. The Axe-Fx 3 is simply the most robust piece of hardware on the market. It has such a tremendous amount of processing power and memory that building a super complex signal chain is a breeze. I use this to process 2 guitars and a bass when my band plays live, and it does it with ease. Here's my signal chain to give you guys an idea of what I'm talking about. There is a ton of stuff in there, and I haven't come across anything else that can keep up with it in terms of its processing power. The other major factor is the routing options. The fact that I can run 3 instruments through it and have all of my patch changes happen automatically via MIDI is such a huge convenience for me. For those that don't know, I'm in a metal band called Sacrificer. We're a 3-piece band with myself playing guitar, and we have a drummer and a vocalist. A huge part of what makes us able to pull that off without having a bunch of extra gear to haul around is the Axe-Fx. There are more parts of my rig that I will get into later in the video during the demonstration, but the Axe-Fx is the central unit that controls all of the tone in my band. Another reason that I love the Axe-Fx is the amount of support that it receives. Say what you want about how expensive it is, but for me, having a product that regularly receives updates is pretty important and something that I'm willing to pay more for. And a lot of these improvements are not bug fixes or little updates. Actually, during the time that I've owned the 𝗧𝗛𝗧, which is a little over 2 years I think, they've completely revamped the amp modeling twice. I mean, that's pretty crazy if you think about it. I can't think of another company that sells you something you are more than happy with, and then 2 months later comes and says,
"Hey, that thing you already liked? Guess what? We made it even better."
and regardless of how large or small you may think these improvements are, you can't say that it doesn't show some serious commitment to their products and to their customers on Fractal's part. And probably also how big of tone nerds they are. But you know what? Tone nerds are exactly who you want building your guitar gear. Again, I just want to point people in the right direction, and if you were looking for a specific recommendation from me, apologies. But I think in the long run, you will be much happier making a decision that is informed rather than what some YouTuber told you to get. All right, and with that said, let's cut over here and I will run you guys through my live rig. All right, guys, what's up? I am plugged into my live rig here, and when I say plugged in, it's kind of figurative. I'm actually going wirelessly into this rack, but you get the point. So for those of you who have been asking me about my live rig, I just want to give an overview of this guy really quick and show you what I have going on here. I'm going wirelessly through this Line 6 X2 unit that's right here. This little shitty clip that they put on here does not stay on your strap, so it lives in my back pocket for now. I'll have to find a better clip or something. So I'm connected wirelessly via the X2, and that is going directly into my 𝗧𝗛𝗧 here. I also have this LP16. This plays the click and all the backing tracks for my band. So without getting too into the weeds on this guy, I have the bass and the guitar backing tracks coming out of this, going into the 𝗧𝗛𝗧. The bass is going out into this power amp down here, which is powering the bass cab. And then the guitars are running stereo into this Seymour Duncan power stage that's down here. It is running left and right out into each guitar cabinet respectively. If you guys want a really in-depth video on how this whole thing is hooked up and how it works, let me know down in the comments below, because that could be a very long, convoluted video, so I don't want to get into it too much here. But going back to this thing here, if you look at my signal chain here, you can see I have quite a bit of stuff going on in my signal chain. This is my main guitar tone. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the signal chain here. So I have my input block here, and the 𝗧𝗛𝗧 has a noise gate built into the input block, so I have that engaged. There are the settings on that. And then immediately after that, I have another gate, and this is just catching any spillover that the first one in the input block misses. Next thing we have going on here is we have a wah block, and you can see that that is not engaged. The way that I have this set up, I'm using one of these spring-loaded mission control pedals, and it is set to auto-engage. So basically my wah block is always there, and when I step, you can see it turning on. When I step on this pedal, it automatically engages the wah block and turns it on. And when I take my foot off the pedal, it turns the block off. It's pretty sweet. You get the idea. Basically, we can go full Kirk Hammett mode if we want to. Okay, the next thing I have in the signal chain is a pitch shifter, and I don't use this that often, but it actually just drops my pitch by a whole octave. It's a really excellent sounding pitch shifter. I enjoy it a lot. And the next thing we have here, the amp block, probably the most important block. I'm using the Fryette D60 More amplifier. Now the way the 𝗧𝗛𝗧 works is you can actually have 4 different channels per amp block, meaning you could have 4 different amp modes in each amp block in each scene. So what that means is when I'm cycling through my scenes, let's say I want to have a clean scene with a clean amplifier, I can set one of my channels up as a clean amplifier. I don't have to have a whole different patch for that, which is really nice. This is my main rhythm channel. It is a D60 More. This is how I have it set up. Now another thing that's really cool about the 𝗧𝗛𝗧 is you have a lot of different pages of different modifications that you can make to the amp itself. The way I have this set up is I'm running an input boost in the amp block with a T808. That boost level is maxed out. And we have KT88 tubes in there, and I think I've bumped the negative feedback a little bit on this guy. And like I said, there's a ton of other effects and different modifications that you can make. I don't really mess with this stuff as much as I could. I'm sure I could get some pretty crazy tones out of this thing. but I'm really happy with the way it's set up right now. I really like it. Now let me show you some of the different channels we have here. So if I press more, you can see the channel up and down. This is a PRS Archon, clean for my clean channel. And I have a diesel VH4 as well, Soldano SLO100 lead. I'm not really using those amplifiers that much. It's mainly just the Archon and the Deliverance amplifiers that I'm using, but it's nice to have those other ones on standby as I need them. Now, if we keep moving on here, the next thing that I have in my signal chain is a flanger, which really never gets used. There's like one part in one song where this gets used. It goes something like this, like... And that's how much it gets used in the whole set when we actually play that song. But, you know, it's important to have these things, I guess, for the full effect there. I also have this delay. Pretty cool delay here. I think I'm actually using multiple modes on this delay. So if we go into edit here, this is the lo-fi tape delay. But again, just like the amp blocks, you have different channels. So I'm also using a mono tape, digital mono delay. So I'm also using these other delays and other points in my set list. But on this one, we just have the lo-fi tape delay, which is a pretty cool effect for soloing. I like it. The next block we have over here is the reverb block. So this is the South Church delay. I do have another delay on another channel here, small room, 𝗦𝗣𝗑𝗫𝗓𝗏, whatever. This is some sort of cloud. I have this set up on another scene where it's like more atmospheric. And you can see why I have that one set up for the atmospheric channel. It's just ridiculous. And this is where my signal chain diverges. So I have a cabinet block here and that's panned 100% right. And then there's no cabinet block here and that's panned 100% left. And then those are going to the output block. And the reason that I have it set up this way is because the right side actually goes into this patch bay here. So if I want to send my signal with the cab sound to front of house so they don't have to mic up the cabinet on stage, we can just send it out of this patch bay right here. Try to make it as easy for every sound engineer that I work with. The left side is going into the power amp and that is going into the cabinet with obviously no cabinet emulation, because why would you want cabinet emulation if you're going into a real cabinet? It's weird. And one last little thing I will mention here about the output block, it also has channels as well. So maybe you want to use a different channel and boost the volume on your solo scene or turn the volume down on your clean to have like more dynamic volume control. You can do that in the output block as well. Pretty cool feature there. And then the second signal chain that I have going down here is just the rhythm guitar, and the only thing in here is an amp block. The amp block is the same as it is on the first track, and then I have the same routing going on here, except instead of using a cab block, I'm just using an impulse response block, but same exact setup in terms of routing and being able to send the impulse signal to front of house if needed. And the last one that I have down here is the bass signal chain. And the only thing that I have in the bass signal chain is this drive block. And in the drive block, I'm using the Black Glass 7K, which is based off a dark glass distortion pedal. Or maybe it's based off the amplifier, I'm not really sure, but I think it's based off the distortion pedal. The routing is the same. We have the left side going direct out and then the right side with an impulse response going to the patch bay here. Now that's everything that's happening with the signal chains, and if I want to change my sound when we're playing live, there's one of two ways I do it. If we're just jamming or if I don't have the tracks set up yet, I'll use something like this. This is an AirStep. It's a MIDI controller. You can just plug this in and you can assign these buttons to change whatever you want on the Axe-Fx. I have them assigned to certain scenes, so the first switch will be my main channel, the second one will be my clean, so on and so forth. But typically when we play live, one of the cool things about the LP16 player is you can send MIDI out of it as well. So this MIDI cable is running out of the LP16 into the Axe-Fx, and it is changing my scenes for me at the appropriate times in our set. These pretty much work the same way snapshots do if you're familiar with the Helix line of products, but let's just go through the scenes. So this is my main rhythm channel. Here's my lead channel. This is more of like an atmospheric distorted type channel. I actually love this channel and I should use it a lot more in our set. The next one is just the flanger turned on. That one's pretty basic, there's not a lot going on there. The next one is pretty much the same thing, just with the pitch shifter. The next one we have here is black metal, and really all this is my main rhythm patch, just with a little bit of reverb on it. All right, it's actually a decent amount of reverb, but you get the idea. The next thing we have here is my clean patch. It's a pretty atmospheric, clean patch. And the last thing we have here is the same patch, except my guitar is on the lead channel. So there is just a very small part in our set where the backing tracks are still on the clean channel, but I switched the guitar to the distorted lead channel. Alright guys, again, if you want a really deep dive video on my rig, let me know down in the comments, and let me know if you have any questions specifically on that rig so that I can answer them in that video. Alright, hopefully that helped clear some things up and answered some of your questions, and if you guys like this video, make sure to hit the like button. It really goes a long way to helping out my channel. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.